Today, we're talking about this one thing that if you do not get under control, I can promise will make getting your blue belt very difficult or nearly impossible. This same thing, even if you do make it the blue belt, will ultimately ruin your jiu-jitsu journey. Today, we're talking about what it is, how to avoid it and or fix it, and how to thrive in your jiu-jitsu experience. So without further gun bumping, let's jump in. Expectations are the demon that sit inside your mind and in your heart, unknowingly causing you pain and troubles while you try to navigate the journey that is jiu-jitsu. You see, a lot of us have been taught to seek high expectations when really what we need to be seeking is high-end goals. There is a massive difference here, and if you don't understand that, I'm gonna help you understand that today. Expectations can not only be dangerous in your romantic life, your business life, but very much so in your jiu-jitsu journey. They don't leave any room for changing circumstances, and they do not allow you or your journey to be flexible, which is very much a necessity in jiu-jitsu. Sometimes our expectations can feel reasonable and realistic, but when we start to begin that journey, the experience speaks otherwise. Oftentimes we get foot to mat and realize this is a lot harder than we originally thought. And this is a main reason why you see trial students never make it past their trial period. We see so many new guys come in and then disappear almost immediately. And that's because jiu-jitsu is challenging. I can even go as far as saying we've had state champion wrestlers quit within 2 weeks because they were so used to being amazing at wrestling, and then they come to the jiu-jitsu side and they can't handle being terrible for a short period of time. That comes from high expectations. Are you seeing a pattern here? We need to keep our expectations in check. Another example I can give you is knowing that Kyle Terra got his black belt in 3 years. I'm sure you could see how this would be detrimental to expect of yourself, especially if you're someone who's been training for 2.5 years and you haven't gotten your blue belt yet. You have to remember that there are outliers, and they are the top 0.01% of jiu-jitsu. These are not situations that you can expect of yourself. Think about it like this. Expecting yourself to achieve your black belt in 3 years is kind of like expecting worst case scenarios to always be the standard. Now, obviously, this is on the other end of the spectrum. You're constantly thinking that the worst case scenario is going to be the first case scenario, and that is a great example of an inaccurate expectation. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we have imagining that getting our black belt in 3 years is something that is normal, and it's not. It's extremely rare. Remember, expectations are what we think will happen, while reality is what actually transpires. It's very often that these two do not match up, and that's okay. I feel that most journeys should be difficult. The lack of challenge and lack of hardship devalues the end product greatly. You should never wish for an easy journey or a fast journey. I want you to struggle through it, just like I want myself to struggle through it. That's where the greatest gains come from. That's where the big results come from. When we have unrealistic expectations, the disparity between expectations and reality can oftentimes cause discontentment and even feelings of resentment towards whatever it is that you are having these great expectations for, whether that's your romantic relationship or what we're talking about today, and that's your jiu-jitsu journey. By having these extravagant expectations, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up to have sour feelings towards a martial art that you love. You need to keep that under control, because if you don't, I promise you, getting the blue belt will already be more challenging than it already is. Whether you give your trust to someone or something, and in this case, jiu-jitsu, and it fails to meet your expectations, you're going to feel pain, you're going to feel hurt, you're going to feel resentment, and you can learn almost in a way to hate what it is that you were expecting of yourself and of this thing, jiu-jitsu. Your expectations can not only shape, but also bend your reality. It can change how you physically and emotionally feel towards something or someone. You have to remember this, because jiu-jitsu is an art of fluidity. It's an art of change. It's so dynamic. And in the moment, you can't really focus on one thing. You have to focus on defense. You have to focus on offense. This is one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu. So much is at play here. It's very much chess with body parts. If you get too hyper-focused on what you're doing inside of a submission, you could be leaving another part of your body open for its own submission, such as foot locks, knee bars, stuff like this. And because jiu-jitsu is so fluid and dynamic, it reminds me personally then I need to be fluid and dynamic in my expectations. I can't get locked into one thing, overly commit to that, and then when it doesn't happen, I'm destroyed. That's not how jiu-jitsu works. We need to be fluid and dynamic in our expectations as well. I think a great way to approach this is to have realistic expectations, but shoot for the stars with your goals. There's nothing wrong with setting massively gigantic goals, but when it comes to expectations, you need to be a little more careful, because not hitting a goal isn't necessarily crushing, but having expectations and not meeting those can very much be crushing. It's so easy to see what the guys at the very, very top are doing, and then somehow in our minds twist that to believe that's the standard, that's the expectation to which I will perform. When in actuality, these guys are phenoms, they're prodigies, they are training jiu-jitsu all the time because it's their job. They're training twice a day, 5-6 days a week. They are getting paid to do jiu-jitsu, they're paying their bills with jiu-jitsu, they're feeding their kids, their wives, their partners with jiu-jitsu, and because of this, they're already going to be operating at a higher level. Most of us have kids, a wife, a husband, and some of us who have kids have special needs kids. These things take time away from us. A lot of us have full-time jobs, some of us have part-time jobs, and we can't commit to jiu-jitsu the way the guys at the very top do. So to expect yourself to perform on that level when you can't commit to the kind of training that is required to operate at that level is just crazy, and you need to remember that. I think especially as a white belt, it's easy to become intoxicated by imagining yourself at the top and picturing yourself winning an ADCC, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love that, but to hold yourself to that expectation rather than to hold yourself to that as a goal, I think is a big mistake, because when it doesn't happen and you don't meet your expectations, rather than just failing a goal that you can change and alter and course correct, that's devastating. Living a life without expectation is living a life without disappointment. When you learn to eliminate expectations, you learn to be present. You learn to operate from a place of gratitude and love and strength. And you're able to focus on things that you can control, like your mindset, your emotions, and the actions that you take. You want to get better at jiu-jitsu? Train a little bit more, train a little bit harder, lift a little bit more weight, do more exercises that focus or directly correlate to jiu-jitsu performance. But to create high-end expectations for yourself is, in my opinion, a big no-no. And if I were operating that way, I never would have made it to where I'm at as a 3-stripe purple. And of course, I can't give advice to brown belts or black belts because I don't feel that I'm there yet. But you white belts, you blue belts, and you young purple belts, please listen to what I'm saying. Expectations will destroy your journey. Goals will set you up for success, while expectations will destroy not only your journey, but the love for the martial art itself. If you've been training long enough, you know that you will have an amazing week followed by a very terrible week. This happens to me all the time. I'll be firing on all cylinders. I'll be getting subs. I won't be getting submitted at all. And then the next week, my cardio is garbage. I'm fighting to survive. I'm getting tapped out all the time. These things happen, and expectations are only going to make it worse. Here's my advice to you. Set your goals really high, whether that's becoming an ADCC champ, or something like getting your blue belt in under a year. Whatever it is, set your goals high, and then expect of yourself that you will only do your best. Only focus on doing your best. You do your best with the time you have with what we're given. So whether that means you're injured, you work a lot, you've got an active family life, you're gonna do your best. And some days that's less, and some days that's more. Just as jiu-jitsu is based on fluidity and dynamics, so is your journey with jiu-jitsu. You need to be fluid in how you operate. You need to be fluid with what life throws at you. You need to remember that even though you're giving your best, sometimes you won't be operating at your best, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You need to remember that as a white belt, you're supposed to be terrible at this in the beginning. You're supposed to struggle. You're supposed to not know what you're doing in certain positions, or how to finish submissions, or how to escape certain positions. You're supposed to struggle with learning leg locks. You're supposed to struggle with learning lapel and loop chokes. You're supposed to struggle with all of it. Don't let struggle confuse you. Struggle does not mean you're failing. Struggle means that you're learning. Don't be too hard on yourself, because those expectations will make that struggle even worse. Continue to focus on progress rather than perfection. Just because Kyle Terra got his black belt in 3 years and you haven't gotten your blue belt in 2.5 doesn't mean you suck. It just means you're on your own path. Right? Everyone has their own path. I'm 7 years in at 3-stripe purple belt, which is, I think, pretty standard. I think that puts me probably around a brown belt at my 8th year, and then that gives me 2 to 3 years to get the black belt. So, you know, I will have achieved at least my goal, not my expectation, but my goal is to achieve my black belt after 10 or 11 years of jiu-jitsu training. And guess what? If it takes longer than that, I'm okay. I'm not in any rush. Don't rush your white belt years. Your white belt years are going to be some of your most formative years. You're learning a lot. You're learning your defense. And I know that it can be frustrating, but remain fluid, remain dynamic. That's what jiu-jitsu is. And that's what we need to be with our goals and expectations. We need to remain adaptable, open, and understanding if things don't go as planned. Having this mindset will open up more opportunities and more positive experiences for you in any journey that you're taking. In this case, that journey is jiu-jitsu. So stay open, stay understanding, and stay adaptable. If you want to see success, all you really need is long-term consistency. And you must remember that that consistency isn't always on one trail. It's not always on one path. Be adaptable, be able to switch gears, be able to switch lanes, if you will. And I think that you'll see great success. Learn to have fun with jiu-jitsu. This is one of the biggest things that I had to learn, because when I first started jiu-jitsu, it was very much a war. Everything was a war. And I didn't learn to truly enjoy jiu-jitsu until I was probably halfway through my blue belt. I can tell you a story real quick. When I visited Zurich, Switzerland, 2 years ago, possibly, I met up with the guys at Zurich Gracie. And I remember at this point, I think I was a 1-stripe purple belt, rolling with the black belts. I was sparring with their lead black belt, and I'll never forget that he foot swept me and then held me in knee on belly the entire time. I know how to get out of knee on belly, and I know how to avoid foot sweeps, but because this guy was better than me, he was more skilled, he got the best of me. And when he hit me with that foot sweep, I laughed. I thought it was hilarious, and he laughed too. I was having fun. I just love the idea of being bested because I can learn from that. And then he held me in knee on belly in the most brutal of ways, and he wasn't being mean about it. He was being effective, and I thought it was funny. I enjoyed it, to some degree. It was painful, it did hurt, but I learned a lot from it. And then afterwards, I asked him what was he doing to thwart my defenses, my transitions to escape, and he showed me, and I learned so much from that experience. So not only did I get beat up, but I had fun getting beat up, and I learned from it. So try to remember to have fun. The earlier you can learn this, the better you're going to be. Jiu-jitsu doesn't always need to be a war. Everything you do doesn't need to be a war. If you learn to have fun with what you're doing, you can lower your expectations. You can raise your goals to extremely high levels, and it can be healthy, it can be fun, and it can be an enjoyable process. So I'll leave you with this. Things don't always have to go as planned. You don't have to be perfect, and extremely high expectations are dangerous. If you want to be good at jiu-jitsu, you need to practice long-term consistently. You need to learn to have fun with it, and you need to learn to set fun, extravagant goals, something that you can chase while you're managing realistic expectations. Jiu-jitsu is a major passion of mine, and learning to have fun, learning to be adaptable when it comes to my goals and expectations, and learning that it is fluid and dynamic has helped me so much. Because of this, I have a YouTube channel about jiu-jitsu. Because of this, I get to teach jiu-jitsu. Because of this, I get to enjoy jiu-jitsu even when I'm losing, even when I'm getting beat up. Just remember this, everything doesn't need to be a war, and it's okay to lose. It's not a reason to give up. It's not a reason to feel down on yourself. It should be a reason to propel you forward, to learn more about yourself and the art. I think you get the point. If you have any questions, please drop those below. You guys know I love your comments. I love your wisdom. Some of you blow me away with some of the things you say. And beyond that, comment where you train. I travel a lot, and I always like meeting up with the people that support my videos. Love getting in training at new schools. So if you want to train with me, drop where you roll at. And if I'm in your town, I'll stop by and get some rounds in with you. And that's the video, guys. You know how we like to end them. Eat plants, train hard, and feel good. I'll see you in the next one. I think one of the biggest struggles about filming is just that when I see this, I see a punching bag, like a little punching bag. What's wrong with me? All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.